Welcome, everybody. I have with me the wonderful bassist who now makes Albuquerque his home, international recording artist and wonderful bassist, Mr. Kim Stone. Kim, thank you very much for joining me. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Mike. Thank you for having me.
So I have some questions for you, and we'll get to why Albuquerque here in just a little bit. But you're from the Denver area. Where in particular are you from in the Denver area?
Well, yeah, it's a big city. I grew up in Lakewood, Colorado,
Okay.
which is, central, west central. And I've moved all around, of course, in Denver. And my last residence was in Broomfield, which is North Denver.
Right. And you know what? I like Denver. It's big and it's got such a thriving music scene. I do like the Denver area. And so which leads me to my next question is you started your musical journey in when you were in school. So how did you get started? Well, when did you get started on bass and how did you get started on bass?
Well, that happened when I was about 13. I've been playing, about 15, I guess I switched to bass. I had been playing since I was 12, guitar. I started on guitar. And there's nobody in the neighborhood that played bass. So I picked up a bass. What was my first bass? A 1966 Fender Precision bass that if I still had would be worth $20,000 or some silly thing. But that's how I started around when I was 15, because there's no one else playing bass. And I became, we had a neighborhood band, with my friends in Lakewood.
Okay, and you obviously you continued forward on bass for obviously many years. But so I know you play electric and you play upright. When you were in school, were you just playing electric, or were you working on upright bass also?
I was also working on upright bass. My pop bought me a Suzuki upright bass, a plywood bass, and it was very difficult to play. But I kept hacking at it. And I'm still learning and playing that upright.
So if you were in Lakewood, then I'll take it then you attended Lakewood High School out there in Denver. Is that correct?
That's right. For 1 year.
Oh,
and then they threw me out for my long hair a couple times. They sent me home. Yeah, it was like that back then. I'm an old guy. And, no long hair. Your hair couldn't touch your collar. And at that time, Jefferson County, which was the school county, made open enrollment. So if you could get your tail to any of the high schools in the county, if you had a car, you could go to any high school. And I picked Golden High School in Golden, Colorado. It was a very liberal high school.
Yes.
And I did very well out there. And so I went to Lakewood for 1 year, but still lived in Lakewood and drove to Golden High and graduated from Golden High School.
Okay, and that makes sense now because there were with some of the things that I read. So, did you attend college at all? I mean, once you finished high school, where'd you go from there? I mean, I know you were pursuing music, but did you attend a college at all?
I moved to Boulder, and the only college I've ever really done is when I moved to San Francisco from Boulder when I was 19, decided to move. And I took, an off-campus college course in theory.
I'm curious because I read an article that said that after you saw Miles Davis perform live, you switched from performing rock and roll to playing jazz. Is that correct?
That's pretty much it. It's the performance with Miles. He was touring the Bitches Brew record. All right.
Yep.
And I think it was on my 16th birthday, a buddy of mine gave me the record. And I enjoyed it. I didn't understand it really, but I thought it was cool. And he came to Denver and with his band, Jack DeJohnette, Ayerto, and I attended the show, and he played the song Bitches Brew, and I had no idea, Mike, that it was a song. I thought it was just an improvisation, crazy stuff. And when I realized that that had framework, that there was a skeleton to that music, it changed my whole life. And I started pursuing jazz very heavily at that point.
Okay.
And I backed up and learned bebop. I
Okay.
moved in with a roommate that had a huge record collection. Oh, here's Charlie Parker, here's John Coltrane. You know, I'm 18, 19. And I started my studies.
Okay.
But my jazz world started with Bitches Brew. Didn't start with Charlie Parker.
And that's fine. I had to, in one of my classes in college, we actually studied the whole workings behind Bitches Brew and why and what it and how it was such a departure from what it was before, and how he brought in all those unique people. I mean, George Benson played guitar on that, for Pete's sake. It was such a unique combination, and it is very different than what everyone expected. And at first, the critics hated it. They really hated it. And then all of a sudden, everybody started to understand, wait, what is this that he's trying to do? So now you have other influences though, right? Because I understand Charles Mingus is a big influence of your bass playing. Who else is some of your big influences of your bass playing?
I really love Ron Carter.
Oh,
I think Ron Carter's bass playing with the famous Miles Quartet with Wayne Shorter and Tony Williams and Herbie Hancock, I still think to date that's the best swinging jazz bass playing I've ever heard.
Oh, and absolutely. Matter of fact, what he just set a world record for being on the most recordings, I think is what I heard, the most recordings ever. So not just any other, not just one particular, instrument, just the most recorded artist ever.
I know. I follow him on Facebook and I watch his videos. And I got to say, I was interviewed years ago in some kind of bass magazine. I forget which one it was, Bass Frontiers or something. And he read the article and I had mentioned him, and I also had talked about how I thought jazz was just improvisation and not necessarily any kind of harmonic approach or any kind of rhythmic approach necessarily, saying that, jazz doesn't have to be swing. And he wrote me a letter.
Really?
And said he enjoyed my article.
Oh, that is absolutely great.
It's
out
of nowhere. It was
to have your hero write you a letter like that. Oh, I hope you framed it and put it up on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, I just love him. I'm so glad that Ron Carter's still with us and he's still playing and he sounds really good. And he, that's where we want to be, right, Mike? We want to be in what is he, 80 something?
82, now? I think. Something like that.
82. He's a role model. We want to be playing until we're 80, right? 82 and 90.
Yeah,
want to keep
absolutely.
Our hands together, your chops together. We want to be able to do it. Yeah, man.
Yep. So let's get into some of your performing. You joined Spyro Gyra in 1982. And I understand there's a real cool story about where you were when you got the phone call to join the band. Do you want to tell me about that?
Well, it wasn't so much a phone call. It was the band, Tom Schumann, Chet Catalo, and Eli Konikoff, the members at that time, piano, guitar, drums. They had flown me to New York, to Flushing, New York. Not Flushing, Suffern.
Oh, okay.
For the studio. And I had been playing with the Rare Silk Band. I don't know if you're familiar with them. And if people aren't familiar with them, it was a jazz vocal group from Colorado. Made a wonderful record called New Weave, W-E-A-V. And I got a Grammy nod. And we were opening for Spyro in Colorado. We did 5 dates just around the state. And they took notice of me. And they were looking for somebody new, flew me to New York, and I went to the audition. It was like walking into the fire, man. They're pulling in a bunch of New York cats to audition to. They pull me in. I do my audition. I felt good about it. Went back. They put me up in a hotel. They flew me out there, put me in a hotel. That never happens anymore. Okay, if you want to make an audition, folks, you're going to drive yourself. It's a cattle call. It's not going to happen that way. But those are the old days. And they were just wonderful. And I'm sitting in the hotel room at the Holodome in Suffern, New York. Bang, 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 man. The door's just like getting nailed. I open it up. It's the three of my future bandmates who say, you got the gig. And we spent the night talking and laughing.
Oh, that's great to be able to have that experience.
That's how it happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, it was to get the audition was something. And anyhow,
no, that's great.
I'm a lucky boy.
I'm familiar with Rare Silk because I actually saw you guys play and open for Spyro Gyra when you guys were on tour, because I was in Colorado at the time, and I'm familiar with it. And we'll talk about Rare Silk here in just a little bit. The Spyro Gyra gig was, I mean, you guys did so many great songs, but one of the one that always sticks out, and I'm sure you're asked about it, but is the song Bob Goes to the Store. Now, I think it's a great song. I love the idea of it. And so that was on the album Breakout, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So is it true, and I'm just curious if you could tell me the story about it. Is it true that when you guys played at Red Rocks, Bob actually came onto the stage and got to run around while you guys were playing it? Is that true?
Well, you have done your investigation, haven't you, man? I take my hair off to you. It's true. It's a true story. So Bob Goes to the Store is about my dog, Bob. He was a black lab mix of some kind that I adopted from a doggy shelter. And I wrote this song because one night I was recording a song with another friend in Boulder. And I asked the recordist's wife to go out and get me something at 7-Eleven, and she brings back my drink and my dog. My dog had jumped the fence. We had always taken a walk to the 7-Eleven at night, and I had left him at home, and he jumped the fence, and he was just waiting for me there. So she brought back. So that's where the vibe comes from. Bob Goes to the Store, and Jay Beckenstein, the leader of Spyro, the sax player, would always let everybody present music for the upcoming record. Mm-hmm. And at that time, folks, it was records. And at the beginning, and I presented that song. I'd done a demo, and they accepted it. And so anyhow, so Bob Goes to the Store gets on the record, and we played Red Rocks. It's where my family was. My folks were taking care of Bob, the dog. Mm-hmm. While I was living in New York. And I said, come on out and bring Bob to Red Rocks. And they had to get a special, go ahead to bring the dog into the park. And they brought him, and everybody loved Bob. But while we're playing that song, I said, Dad, just let him go on stage and see what he does. He'll come back to you. He's good. And we're doing the song. It kind of makes a break. It stops, and I go, Bob, are you here? And he comes running out, and the spotlights hit him. The crowd starts going, Bob, Bob, Bob. He goes up to the footlights and stops and looks up and hears all these people. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And of course, he ran around to everybody in the band first, and everybody patted him, Dave Samuels, at that time. And it was just, amazing moment.
Oh, wow. That would be absolutely awesome. Now this Spyro Gyra wasn't the first time you recorded Bob Goes to the Store, right? Didn't you record it on a different album of your own making?
Yes, I did a record called Earth School, which has since been re-released, Earth School Plus, with a couple new tunes on it, with the great Ron Miles on trumpet. You're familiar with Ron?
Yes, and I was so sorry to hear that he died. I was so devastated. I was familiar with Ron, and I had seen him a few times up in the Denver area. Such a loss. Oh, such a loss.
Did he have like the most beautiful tone ever?
Well, the fact that he played cornet and not trumpet, but he liked to play cornet, and he had that custom cornet. Oh, yeah. I mean, such a beautiful guy.
It was during that time Ron Miles was in the band with Mark Fuller on drums, Eric Moon on keys and myself. And it was a tune that I had written a while, you know, in probably 81.
Okay.
And we recorded the demo. You know, we did our version, and that's what I presented to Jay.
Oh, okay.
Version we did earlier. And so that's how it went. And
oh, that is so awesome. So now after Spyro Gyra, which you left the band in 86, right? 86. You then in 1990 joined the Rippingtons, and you were with them through 2008. Now, you've played with a lot of people. You started with Rare Silk. You've played with David Benoit. You've played with Ron Miles. You've played with so many different bands. So who did I leave out? Who else have you played with that I didn't mention so far?
You know, I played with Firefall for a minute.
Oh, really?
I got into Spyro and all that stuff.
And they were kind of like a pop, I want to say country band, but that's not it. It was kind of like a pop rock band, right? Freefall?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. I think that's a good word. You know, you are the woman that I always dreamed of.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
That was their big hit. So I played with them. I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of opportunities to jam with a lot of people. It was Spyro Gyra when we were in Japan. George Ween, the promoter, always had a jam session at night, and he would just tell you who you're playing with on a big bulletin board. He'd write your name, you know. And I got to play with B.B. King.
Oh, really?
Kenny Burrell.
Oh,
B.B.
Kenny
King,
Burrell?
Kenny Burrell, and B.B.'s rhythm section. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I've got pictures of that. B.B. King and Kenny up front. I'm sitting in the back. And I got to play a bunch of B.B. songs. All his songs, by the way, were B.B. King songs were like in accidental keys: A flat, D flat, E flat.
Really?
Not any of the guitar keys.
No, not E. Yeah, not E or A, right?
E and A, G. It was amazing.
Well, that's cool.
And he was such a gentleman. During the performance in Japan, he comes back to me. I'm sitting in the back on a stool, and he says, he comes over and says, "It's an honor to play with you." I just about fell off my chair. He was the real superstar. He was the real deal, BB.
Oh, yeah.
He would go out to the fence and greet people and sign autographs. He was just the most loving guy. You know, he'd be overweight. He's got diabetes, and he still would go out and be with people. He was something.
So now you've been nominated for 5 Grammys. Did I get that correct? 5?
That's right. I'm a 5-time Grammy loser.
No, that's not what I meant. Just to be nominated.
That's what I meant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you know, not personally, folks, but, you know, with Rare Silk, the jazz vocal group, and one nomination, and 4 with Spyro Gyra.
Okay.
There's the 5.
Okay. I'm sorry that you had 1, but hey, I think you're deserving of a Grammy, but to me, just to be nominated would be an honor within itself. Yeah, you want to win one. I get that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm honored. I just like to make light of it and fun of it. You know, I like to make fun of myself. You know?
That's okay.
But no, it's a great honor. It was awesome. You know, I think Pat Metheny won all of them. You know, at that time, he was just winning every year. Well deserved. I love that. You know. So
now you live in Albuquerque. You moved here recently. When did you move here? And then the next pertinent question is why?
Well, I moved here in January of this year.
Okay.
So 7 months ago. And I've always loved New Mexico. Of course, I've been down here before. Did a recording session in Cerritos, and up by Santa Fe.
Yeah.
In a wonderful studio. A guy named Baird runs it. I think it's still there. And I fell in love with New Mexico. I just, you know, and I mean, that's 35, 40 years ago. And I've always wanted to live here. So I'm up and down, you know, I came back after all my travels with the Rippingtons, you know, did 19 years with them, lived in the Los Angeles area. And I moved back to Denver. I was playing with a really wonderful blues band, Lionel Young Blues Band, who's won a lot of awards. the IBC, the International Blues Challenge down in Memphis every year. If there's a blues society in your town, you send a band, and even from Germany or Sweden, you know, we heard some very cool, interesting blues bands. And we won in 2014, the best band. We beat out 250 bands anyhow, but that's mostly what I was doing. And I'm a jazz guy, and I wasn't being embraced. And I'll say this, you know, if anybody from Denver is listening, you guys were not embracing me to play jazz. And I swing hard, folks, you know, and there's 4 jazz schools up there pumping out young kids, you know, that can play. And I've always loved New Mexico, as I said, and I had a friend down here, Neil Stone, who's a drummer. He's since semi-retired, but he did a lot of playing down here. And so I decided, I had been taking care of my mother for 5 years prior to my move in January to Albuquerque. And she passed in November at 98 years old. So no condolences. She had a good run. Okay.
Yeah.
And when she was gone, I made the move and came down here, found an apartment online, just, you know, sight unseen, moved on the northwest side. I'm over here on the northwest side. And everything's been going great. I got to say, everybody's been so wonderful to me. Bass players, you know, Donnie Tesso, Milo, the great bass player in town.
Yeah, Milo Armadillo.
Yep. You know, started communicating with me. We've become friends. We go out and eat breakfast. They've been throwing me gigs. It's just been a wonderful experience for me. And I'm now playing with Chris Cordova, piano player in his Latin band, doing a lot of playing with him. And so I guess I made the right move.
Well, yeah. And we're happy to hear you. We're happy that you're here. You know, and the funny part about all of this,
play a lot. I wasn't playing enough. I wasn't playing enough jazz. I wasn't playing enough of anything but the blues. And I love the blues. And let me say this to all young jazz musicians: you need to know the gut bucket blues to play any jazz or to play any popular music in the United States. You know, it's the root. And I hear a lot of these jazz schools bypass that, kind of look their nose down at the blues. And I'll tell a quick story. Maybe you read it in Marcellus's last book, which is probably at least the last one I read, must be 7, 8 years ago. He's playing with some of the old cats down in New Orleans, and he blows some hellacious trumpet solo. And one of the old cats in the band says, "You just played more notes in your life than I ever have," and didn't say nothing. Didn't say nothing. He says this to Winton, okay?
Oh, no.
And Winton comes back. He says, "Well, try playing, you know, you should try playing some of that stuff I'm doing in my quintet that he had at the time," which was, you know, pretty heady stuff. And the old cat, I think it was the saxophone, said, "I would just play the blues through all that mixed up shit." And that's really what the blues is about. You can solidify whatever song you're playing into a blues scale. You know, you just figure out where the key changes are and just keep going there.
Yeah,
it's like Bemsha swing Monk, right? It's got all these changes, all these crazy flat 5-2-5 changes, right? Flat. It's C minor and F minor blues. That's all that song is, you know.
Okay, see, now you've got my curiosity, because I'm going to go and look that up. See, I cut my teeth on playing the blues. That was, now, you know, I'm not young, but when I was going to school, the first thing that they had us do was, here, you need to learn to play these blues changes. You need to understand the blues, because you can't go to more advanced stuff if the basics aren't learned. And that stuff that's stuck with me all these years. I find that, yes, you can break everything down to some really easy scales. If you look at it, you don't have to be complex.
You know, blues guitar players, real blues, gut bucket blues players, know that if you're in A, all you got to do is solo in A. And when they're going to the 4 and the 5, or it's 2-5, you know, 1, it's all harmonic. And that's what you can do with jazz. You don't need to make all the changes. You don't need to be be, marking all the changes with your solo, or as a bass player with your walking pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, listen to Paul Chambers.
Oh God, yes.
Listen to Paul McCartney.
Yeah, you know what? Matter of fact, you've listened to a lot of his stuff. My wife's a big Beatles fan. He keeps it extremely simple. It's not complex. It's very simple,
and
he does
play, and he won't play the tonic either. A lot of times, he
really
has this line that goes through it. He's amazing, and just like Paul Chambers, he wouldn't be making all the changes. He'd be walking through it, and that's what I've learned. You're in B flat blues, just keep swinging in B flat. You don't got to play the 4 chord, whatever you end up on, and as you're going up and down the scale in your own way, it's going to be cool. I mean, initially look at the key signature and there you are, but then you have to see where it modulates and make that mark. But a song with 35 changes in it can be 3 changes.
See,
right?
Now, okay. I will, okay. See, Donna Lee's not going to scare me so much anymore. So, so now I understand, and I didn't know that you had even moved here until I saw that you were doing master classes for the New Mexico Jazz Workshop. How is that going?
I'm doing that now. Tomorrow night's the 3rd one out of 6. It's going great. I've got some swell students, really great, very into learning. A singer who wants to sing bass, Amy Jane Johnson. She's a singer in town. I don't know if you run across her, and an old friend of mine. And she and her husband her husband's Arlen Johnson, guitar player, and she wants to comp for him singing bass, although she doesn't have the register down low like I can, like you can, but she's doing it. It's just very interesting, and it's going well. And I'm teaching in that whole rap I gave you, I've been giving them, about just solidify, play the blues, and I've been just working him on the blues, and not the gut bucket blues, but I've been letting him swing and stuff, and then making him solo and making them swing. I say, you're in G, stay in G, and don't be afraid. Don't make the changes. Don't make the changes. Just keep in G and see what happens.
Okay.
And I say, if you play the changes, if you're playing the 4 and 5, you're a loser. Don't do that.
I bet there's some resistance in there.
No, everybody's cool, but I tell you, it's really hard for bass players not to make the changes, because that's our job, right? But jazz opens that up. And Paul Chambers, Ron Carter, Charlie Mingus are examples of that. Anyhow, I'm teaching it. I don't want to teach. It's the Jazz Workshop is wonderful. Maud Bienhauer called me out of the blue, and I'm just so honored to do it, and that they asked me, and I'm having a swell time.
Cool. Well, hopefully you'll continue doing it for the Jazz Workshop. And so are you teaching private lessons? Can someone contact you if they're interested? Or are you trying to stick with more of doing gigs and like doing these masterclass kind of things?
Yeah, I like the masterclass. I'm not doing any privates right now. Okay. And I'm into a real heavy songwriting thing.
Oh,
good.
To put
together a funk jazz band, kind of like a Marcus Miller thing, in town, and I'm writing for it.
Oh,
and right now I have 3 new songs.
Oh,
and
cool.
I want to get at least 10.
So you're concentrating on writing songs, and you're doing gigs. As you said, you're playing tonight at the Cactus Brewery, which is the weekly jam that they have out there. Any other bands that you're playing with in town, or just you're waiting for phone calls and you get the phone call and then you're going out to play gigs? Is there any particular band you're associated with?
Not other than Chris Cordova, and we've been working a lot. He's a piano player. We do we put the timbal and a Latin feel on standards. I thought of you,
right?
Stuff like that. And he's been my most work. I've been getting calls here and there. I played with Rudy Boy, Yaramila. He's a blues guitar player in town. You're familiar with Rudy Boy? He's one.
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
He's called me for a gig. I did a gig with Jim Casey, who works with Hillary Smith.
Yes.
He does a thing. And, I've been doing a few odd things. Played with, Bert the great jazz piano player, Bert Dalton.
Oh, Bert.
Dalton.
Oh, Dalton. Okay,
Bert.
fine. So you've been doing work. You did some work with Bert. That's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I have one more question for you. Strangest gig you've ever done?
Oh, Lord. I've been trying to think because you gave me a heads up on that question. And I can't, of all the gigs in the most recent past, oh, here's one. Playing Guantanamo Bay for the troops down there.
Really?
Twice went down there. Okay. Flew us down there.
With what group?
Who was that with? The Rippingtons.
Okay.
The Rippingtons. We get a call to play Guantanamo Bay. The CO, the commanding officer's wife, is a smooth jazz fan.
Okay.
So she's going to throw a smooth jazz concert. Nelson Rangel was down there, a whole bunch of cats, right? And they flew us down there. All the branches of the service are down there, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines. They got this, we had taken that little piece of the island over 100 years ago and never gave it back, okay, to the Cubans. Cubans are just, 5 miles north on the other side of barbed wire and anti-personnel landmines and tank mines in little towers watching you, and this wonderful woman, the CO's wife, threw this concert in it twice. And that was maybe the strangest gig because it's strange down there. In Camp Delta, I have a t-shirt that I got at the PX, and it's like a heart with wings that you see a lot of. But around the heart is wrapped razor wire.
Oh, okay. God.
It's deep. All right. Camp Delta, which is a beachfront property down there where they had all of the so-called bad guys, and I guess they still do.
Yeah.
And that's got to be the strangest gig.
Okay. So last question.
Which is strange. But people were nice, and all the military people were wonderful. And I got the CEO, commanding officer. He said he could play bass, and I called him up there. I said, front and center, while we were playing, I'm putting my bass on him. Well, he couldn't really play, but it was nice to have him up there.
All right. So before we end this, one last question: red or green? Do you have a preference, red or green chili?
Oh, I like Christmas.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank Kim Stone for joining me today. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and thank you for joining Albuquerque. Thank you for joining New Mexico. Thank you for adding to the scene here. And I look forward to actually meeting you in person, and we're going to have a conversation sometime very soon. Thank you all very much. Hope to talk to you all very, very soon.